Hey guys, and welcome to High and Black. I'm Bisi Akins, and High and Black is a safe space where you can get to know Black people, learn about their Black experiences, and how they've navigated their lives and careers as Black people. On today's episode, I'm joined by the CEO and founder of Mentivity, Sayce Holmes Lewis. How are you, sir?
I'm good.
Good?
How you doing? Yeah.
I'm well. You know what, yeah? We're based in London, guys, if you guys don't know. And yesterday, it was like raining really heavy, and now it's not.
It's beautiful.
It's not beautiful because the sun's not shining.
Well, it's great for me. It's my first time here. It's got a great stadium in the background. I'm loving it.
So how have you been doing? How have you been keeping during these times?
Yeah, I've been good. Just really focusing on myself, my son, Mentivity. Just really trying to figure out and navigate these difficult times, obviously with COVID and just everything that's going on in the world. So it's been pretty difficult but challenging, but it's been good. It's been a blessing. So it's been pushing along. So yeah, doing well.
And for people that don't know about Mentivity, I read up on it, but what would you say it is?
So it's a mentoring organisation and an alternative education provision. So what we do is focus on supporting young people in terms of early intervention within education, also parents and professionals. So we really focus on the informal education within education, and what that is learning through conversation. We call it conversation-based learning. So supporting young people and kind of rehabilitating them to be a part of the educational system, but also to raise their aspirations in terms of their careers and linking it to their passions and just showcasing them in a different way rather than what they see in the media all the time. So just giving that support that they need, and it's something that I needed as a young man. And that's the whole reason why I founded Mentivity, because it was something that I needed within education, within society and different settings.
And you said that you founded it because it was something that you needed when you were younger. So take us back to your days growing up. What was it like as a young Black man?
Well, I grew up in southeast London, so I grew up on the Aylesbury estate, which is situated between Peckham, Camberwell and Elephant and Castle. So at one point it was one of the largest housing estates in Europe, and I grew up there in the 80s. I'm 37 now, so I was born in 82. So I grew up there in the 80s, and it was a pretty notorious estate. It was kind of like a us and them mentality, especially with the police coming to the estate quite often, because there was high issues with drugs, paraphernalia in the stairwells. But it was a great community as well, and it was a struggle. You know, for the first 8 years it was great. Mum and dad. Then my dad left at the age of 8, and that's when I kind of encountered a lot of my issues, and kind of like had a mini identity crisis, because where I'm situated is not far from Bermondsey and Millwall Football Club. So there was a white working class predominantly around the area, but there was a lot of racism. And that was my first encounter when my dad left. My first encounter with racism was at the age of 8, being called the N-word, being called a monkey, and just kind of understanding, right, I'm different from other people. And it was just a struggle, because I was the oldest of 4 at the time, and just kind of becoming the man of the house in that respect. So there was a lot of pressure on me to be the role model for my siblings, but I didn't know who I was. So I was on my own journey, and it was a lot of pressure. So I just found it very difficult within education. There's a lack of Black males in education, and I didn't really have anyone that was my role model immediately outside of my family. So it was hard. So my role model actually became Ian Wright, because literally I came across football because my dad used to watch football, and then he became my role model and my inspiration. And my dad was in my life, but it was in and out. And Ian Wright was probably the only constant, outside of my uncles on my mum's side of the family. So it was just a weird time, very precarious time for me. And I found football, and football was my passion. And that's what kind of saved me from getting involved in kind of things I shouldn't be getting involved with as a young man. So it was difficult, and it was a journey that carried on into my teens. I really struggled in education, not because I wasn't intelligent enough, I just didn't like it. Just didn't feel it was for me. You're hearing about history, and you're hearing about slavery, and that's Black history. That was it. Ancient Egypt. I didn't want to hear about the Tudors, the Stuarts. I didn't want to hear about Henry VIII, nothing like that. And I didn't identify with it. So it was just a constant journey of trying to find myself. And football allowed me to do that. And that's what really kind of set me on the path to finding Mentivity, because I followed that passion, and I started coaching young people. And I became a professional football player at the age of 19. So I moved to the Republic of Ireland. And that's put me on a journey, the coaching journey. Then I realized I could build rapport with young people and kind of support them in a sporting setting, but also educational setting. When I came back from Ireland, and I actually went to Romania to play as well. And then that's when I started kind of working in youth work settings and just finding that I could help young people. And that's when my secondary passion of working with young people came from.
Yeah. And you said that when your pops left, that's when you first sort of encountered the first sort of problems or the issues, right? And I want to touch on that in terms of like that lack of father figure and how that causes a lot of young men or a lot of young people to stray. I grew up in a single parent household, so I didn't have my pops in the house, and that I feel like even now as a grown woman, I'm still dealing with the fact that there's this void that I'm always trying to fill, or there's this void that there was something. Why weren't you there? Why did you leave me? That identity, not knowing just why he left and why he wasn't there for me. And I just want to know what it's like for a guy in that sense, because I know how it affects, and I've researched. I did like a whole dissertation on it. I did my dissertation for my undergrad degree was called "To the Fatherless: The Effect of Fatherlessness on the Romantic Relationships of Women in the UK." And in that, I really learned a lot about, just how we sort of deal and heal and all those daddy-daughter issues and all of those things. But I don't know what it's like for a young man who doesn't have that father figure. So how important is the father figure, one? And two, what is it really like when he's not around?
It's a great question. I mean, my dad was my everything, between being born and when he left, those 8 years, he was like my superhero. And he was very masculine. He was really good at so many different things, a musician. I mean, he's a music teacher now, has his own music school. The guy was just talented, carpenter. He could build anything, could build a kitchen, build tables. He just knew how to fix things and create things. He was very creative. So when he left, it was just a massive void, like you said, and it wasn't filled because he wasn't being consistent. So in terms of like every other weekend, supposed to be picking us up, I'd be by the window in anticipation waiting, and I'd see all these cars driving past, hoping it was him, and then it wasn't him. And it was just like that constant kind of letdown and disappointment. But I used to go to his mum's, my gran, every other weekend, and he would be there and kind of in and out. But it was just never consistent, and emotionally, it just caused me a lot of issues. Like my emotional regulation was poor. I had a lot of anger issues. I was frustrated, and I just found it really difficult to navigate life without having someone that is a black man, in Great Britain, giving me that guidance, giving me that support. And I don't think he really understands what I needed and required from him. And being a father myself, my son's 14 now, and just understanding what I needed, I'm trying my best to give my son now what he needs, but not dictating what happens in his life, just talking and listening to him. And that's the most important thing you can do for your children, is listen to them and really just shape from their own experiences rather than your experience and telling them what you think they should do. I mean, he's kind of following in my footsteps in terms of football, and he's took it upon himself. He's playing for a club at the moment, Lambeth Tigers, and he's really pushing. But I'm also really pushing the education side of it and the self-education and getting to understand the world around him, because it's very, very important. I think we have to speak to the souls of our children and really just give them that support. And I don't feel that I had that from my dad, and there was something that I yearned for and didn't get, and that continual frustration, anger went into my 30s. But now I've made peace of it. I'm cool. I understand that there were certain things that he experienced in his life which didn't allow him to give me what I needed. So now I understand that as a father myself, in the bigger picture, I'm no longer angry. I'm no longer frustrated. So I get it. It's very difficult. Some young people won't be affected if their dad leaves. Some people will be. And for me, it was a 20 years, 20 odd years of dealing with that and really trying to kind of bridge that gap between me and my dad. So it was hard. And I always just looked to that in other people, first the streets, because that's where you're going to look to it. You look to the streets and that kind of camaraderie and other people that don't have their dads, and you basically, without knowing, you're connected because you don't have dads and you understand it, but we never spoke on it. So it was just weird, and I was looking to the streets and being guided by the streets, and between the ages of 8 and 14, I was just in a lot of trouble, a lot of trouble within school, on the street, kind of known to police and things like that. And nothing major, just low-level stuff, just being mischievous and young black male, but I didn't see anything progressive. I didn't see anything that I could really aspire to other than football. So it was hard. But I understand now why it happened, and it's led me to doing what I'm doing now. Yeah, for sure.
And you spoke about now that you're at peace with it, right? And obviously you said 20 odd years, so that's a whole long time, like a whole journey, a whole process. You see the peace that you found now with that situation. Do you feel like that came from you knowing who you are now as a man?
Definitely. I've been on a real journey of discovery the last couple of years. It's been hard running an organization, being a father, being a partner. I was engaged to be married, but again, that broke down because I burned out. Literally, I was in a long distance relationship, but I burned out because I was doing too much, and I literally got to the point where I just wanted to give up on everything. And it's because I give a lot to people, and I give so much to people that I sometimes forget about myself. And I need to be mindful of that. And I've learned, especially last year, how important it is to put yourself first initially so that you can provide for others. First and foremost, my son, and obviously then Mentivity and the organization, and then my family pretty much as well, which is not in that order. But yeah, it's important to really focus on your journey and look at the different types of trauma you experience, because there's generational trauma, there's trauma that you may have experienced as a child and even in your adulthood from relationships, whatever it may be. So it's just something now which I really kind of tapped into and just been embracing, like yoga, meditation, as well as working out, playing football. It's just now really taking charge of myself and my life, and I feel better for it, and I'm in a much better position. So it's important now that I speak that to young people, especially my son, and just tell them, look, this is my journey of discovery. It's all right to be upset. It's all right to cry as a man. It's all right to be vulnerable, because everyone just thinks because you're a black man, you have to just suck it up and carry on. That's what our parents did. So we're modeling their behavior subconsciously and consciously. So it's important that we allow young people to actually express themselves and talk and have a safe space, because mental health is very rife. We're on the verge of a mental health crisis in the country, if not already especially with COVID. So
especially with lockdown. They just locked with their minds.
Yeah,
right?
trust me, it was mad. Like even for us, it was hard, right?
Yeah.
So imagine you're 8, 9, 10, being in the house every day and struggling and seeing all this fear mongering and in the media and just being fearful for the future. But what does that future look like for young people? So a lot of them are giving up, and they have been given up because there's a lack of opportunities, a lack of understanding, a lack of empathy. Like there's so much. So this is why we do so much of the work that we do within the school setting, because that's where the children are, but also shaping their future, but also training the teachers in terms of how to include young people, understanding cultural equity and racial equity and things like that. And, education is very institutionally racist, and people won't ever speak about that. No, it really is that, because everyone's talking about unconscious bias. Like, I don't subscribe to it personally. Some people may have it, but it's conscious bias because it's a construct based on your current worldview. And if you don't want to look outside that worldview based on ignorance, then you're going to be consciously biased to people. And it's so important that we really start talking about that. And like you said, we just got to challenge that, and we've got to showcase young people that you can do it, and give them the tools to feel empowered so they can speak up. They can be, emotionally regulated, because that's a massive problem, especially with black boys. Not being able to emotionally regulate. So we have to do a lot, and that's where we do it through conversation-based learning. Sharing those experiences is key.
So with Mentivity, do you just go into the schools and you just sit down and have conversations with the kids, or how does it work?
Kind of. I mean, it's a bit more structured than that.
A bit more structured,
but we do one-to-one mentoring, which is a key facet of, especially with hard-to-reach young people, because you've got to build that trust. And a lot of young people have a lack of trust.
So before you continue with that, how would you define a hard-to-reach young person? So
someone that's not engaged in education.
Okay.
So it could be an 8-year-old that's really struggling in terms of emotional regulation, that might be angry at certain things, but the people in the school and the teachers are not actually asking what the issue is. Some children, like for example, there was a young man that I was working with. I actually started coaching him at the age of about 12. So I'd known him for about 2 years before I started working in this school. So when I went to the school, he was one of the young people that was referred to us. So one of my colleagues was working with him and doing one-to-one mentoring with him. And when he used to turn up to football, he was always late, like 10, 15, 20 minutes late. And I'm all about punctuality and trying to teach life skills through football. So when he's turning up, I'm like, yo, come on, man, you're late. Like, what's going on? Like, be on time. I want to play you. You're a good player, but I can't play you now. And he would just kind of come in and be like, yeah, okay, yeah, sorry. And I'd be on his case. Not once in those 2 years did I ask why he was late. I just said, oh, you're late. Wow. So when it got to the school, I found out that he was a young carer for his mum. So at the age, for that whole time, from 12 up to 16, when we were working with him, he was caring for his mum. So before he comes to school, He gets up in the morning, he cleans, he washes his mom, feeds her, makes sure everything's done in the house, then he gets himself ready. And it took a long time every day. And that's why he was late. So when he was coming late to football, and I'm on his case, and when he's going to school, and they're like, oh, you're getting the detention, no one asked him why he was late. So all those obstacles he had to overcome just before he got to school, or just to go to football, just to live his life. And not one person, including me, asked him those questions. So we've got to now build that kind of empathy in teaching in terms of those professionals and get people to understand that you have to ask questions. You have to understand what the root cause of the issues that young people are facing. So that will be an example of someone that's hard to reach, but they're not exactly hard to reach because all you've got to do is ask a question. You know, but you've got young people that now on the streets selling drugs, you know, the whole county lines issue, like that's a massive problem because they don't see any other viable way to make money other than what they see on Snapchat, on TikTok, on Instagram, because they're seeing all these people making money, you know, like glorifying selling drugs, driving these cars, got all these things, and they can see it and it's viable and it's visible, so they can do it. So they will do it because it's easier. Children are always going to do what's easiest for them, always. But they don't understand the pitfalls. They can't see into the future. They can't see where they're going to end up. And that's where we need to come in and support them as adults and as an organization. So it's so many different reasons, you know, expulsions, like children getting expelled from school. Black boys with special educational needs are like 20 times more likely to be excluded than a white counterpart.
Is that because the school or the organisation just doesn't understand them, or why?
Because they don't understand, because they don't want to understand. And this way it comes back to the conscious biases. Like, oh, you're just going to be a drug dealer, or I've been told that in school. Like, oh, you're just going to end up going to prison. And it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. But because this is basically an underwritten narrative that they believe and they've seen, because the way that we are portrayed in the media, in films, like in society, is that we're deviant, you know, over-sexualized, hypersensitive, angry, all these different negative things.
Yeah.
So when you've got people that never experienced kind of Black, African, Caribbean culture, and they come across young people and they see this, and they see that same thing in the media, they just think, oh, there's something wrong with Black people. Yeah. So they don't even want to ask these questions. Some people don't want to ask the questions. So it's important that we give people lessons around cultural equity, understanding that there are cultural differences. Like when you're teaching in school and you're disciplining a young Black boy, whether he's from Africa or the Caribbean, and they're not looking at you because you're chastising them, you're telling them off. That's not disrespect. It's actually respect. Because in our culture, we're not supposed to look at adult in the face or in the eye when we're getting told off. We look because we're actually just being, you know, kind of subservient in that moment. So when you tell a teacher that, and maybe from a white background, look, he's actually being respectful. He actually respects you. They're like, oh, okay. And when they try it the next time, no problem. So you've solved an issue in the classroom, which was an issue yesterday, just because we told you in our culture it's different. And they're just like, oh, right, now I get it. So we've got to now, it's about educating the educators, educating the teachers informally about their practices and what they do and how to make their classrooms more inclusive. It's so important. So that's what we're really, really focused on. And you know, down the line, we'll be changing policy as well through our work and through the research and the data. But right now, we're just doing the kind of clean up and the mop up work, the early intervention work with young people to make sure that they're on the right track. And you've got to link their careers to a passion, because if you don't, they're going to fall by the wayside. You know, when you've got to wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning to go to uni or go to work, you want to get up and do something that you love. And when you don't, you're just like, ah, it's long.
Why am I doing it? Like, run this, I'm definitely going
to. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And what would you say has been, just in your journey of Mentivity thus far, what has been the most fulfilling moment for you?
You know what? Still being in existence 4.5 years later, because we started off as a limited company. We're not a charity, and we didn't want people to look down on us, because I've worked for charities in the past, and the problem is that charities make money off of our plight, off of the negative narrative around our communities. Oh, look at this young person on the council estate, they need help.
You know, I've never actually seen it like that.
Yeah.
Charities make money off of our plight.
Yeah, it's exploitation. It's always exploitation. You look at the adverts, feed a child, a starving child from Africa. It's always that, like, pulling on the heartstrings, but they're actually the middlemen. Like, they don't need to be there. Like, I could send money directly to someone in Africa who's trusted, and they could do the work. Like, these people are middlemen. And that's why I see a lot of charities are middlemen that are taking money off the top, which can really affect change in communities. So working for a charity, I saw how it kind of exploited that whole narrative. So I decided to go out as a limited company because I wanted people to take us seriously, that we were an organisation and a business. And that was the main thing to me. And that's made it harder. But the plan was to have the limited company, then move towards a community interest company, which is kind of like the halfway between the charity. You can receive a bit of funding and people will look at you as a social enterprise. And now we're forming a charity, so 4.5 years down the line, because we've got a massive partnership with Goldman Sachs. We've just launched. It's massive.
Well done.
Yeah, I'm really, really proud of that because it's been 2 years in the making. Like we've been working in partnership with them since June 2018 when we ran a kind of empowerment day with them and had their staff volunteering, integrating with the kids. And it was a fantastic day, and that was the commencement of this partnership. And in like what happened to George Floyd this year, Goldman Sachs set up a racial equity fund. So it was $10 million between the USA and here, and about 7 million probably went to the US and about 3 million here. So in America, it was like Innocence Project, Your Rights Camp, the NAACP, like so many like historically amazing organizations. And over here, it was the Stephen Lawrence Trust, Runnymede, Stopwatch UK, and Mentivity. So we had 125k donated to us in light of our work and the partnership and the things that we've been doing. And during lockdown, we actually ran our first iteration of the Raising Aspirations project in conjunction with Goldman Sachs. So they just saw our work and were just blown away by it. We had their volunteers on the Zoom calls with 25 young people. We had a young man as far away as Nigeria on every call. He was there, and we didn't know until until the graduation day, because we were like, right, we're gonna have a graduation event. We're gonna buy pizza. We're gonna have music, play games online, and we're like, all right, cool. Then this kid is like, okay, cool. I live in Lagos, and we're like, whatever, bruv, like banner. We thought he was bannering us, and then he was like, no, seriously, I live in Nigeria. We was like, no way. So how are you just telling us that now? But that's now because of like COVID and all that's happened this year. Now we're embracing technology, so we can actually bring young people from around the world with other young people from the UK and enlarging in their experience, and getting them to know each other, almost like kind of pen pals back in the day, really. So it's just basically been a blessing. COVID, I know it's been hard. I lost people during that time as well, but it's been a blessing in terms of the work and the organisation, and we're really flourishing. Like we're really just really pushing, and with Goldman Sachs now behind us in partnership, like we're just onto some big things.
Yeah, I love that. And you spoke on the George Floyd murder, and me seeing that, obviously Black Lives Matter has basically catapulted, and that was a very crucial catalyst to where we are now in terms of the conversations and having these conversations being had and people being more conscious on what it does mean for Black lives to matter. When I saw it, I just couldn't comprehend that there could be such disregard for life just because of the pigmentation of our skin that we didn't even choose. Like before, I always say this, but before we are Black, before our race, we are human.
Yeah.
And how can you miss that, or how can that be so far-fetched that you can stay on someone's neck for 8 minutes and 27 seconds or however long it was? And that is a Black man that we see his life being stripped and taken away from him. As a Black man, how did that make you feel?
I avoided it for a long time. I didn't want to watch it because I've seen it too many times. Tamir Rice and Trayvon Martin, we've seen it, Stephen Lawrence, even closer to home. Even the other day, Kevin Clark in police custody, a 35-year-old man with mental health issues who died after being released from police custody. Like, we've seen this over and over again. Like, we're looking to the USA, but we're not looking at the UK, and the UK is not innocent. We've had over 1,700 police custody deaths or people that have left police custody since 1990, and only one conviction. And that just shows you that the police, like Sir Robert Peel said, the police are the public and the public are police. So if we're not holding the police to account, then who is? And the thing is, they're not going to do it themselves, so we have to. And I avoided it because for my own mental health, the safety of my own mental health, because you have to protect yourself. And Black death, unfortunately, sells. Like it sells like so much. Like you don't see a white person being killed at the hands of the police shared so freely on the internet. That would be locked off by Instagram, Facebook almost instantly. But the fact is that people that are in the position of power want us to see these things to keep us down. Yeah, subjugation. It's that emotional subjugation. Really, it's just it is difficult because you want to see what's going on, but then you don't want to normalize seeing someone that looks like you dying and being killed in such a way that I think why George Floyd has been a catalyst, and everyone talks about Black Lives Matter, and I think for the UK we need to have our own movement because that's an American movement. You know, I much prefer the Black Liberation movement because we need to liberate ourselves from this oppression, and that's really, really important. But just seeing that, it was sickening. It was disgusting. And I think now it's just because everybody was in the same situation at the same time, because we were all on lockdown, everyone's in their houses. People that wouldn't pay attention to that saw it and were forced to see it. And I think there was a kind of an emotional outpouring because everyone was in the same position. Like you said, we're all part of the human race, first and foremost. And everyone saw that moment and everyone just felt like this isn't right. And for the first time, I think there was a worldwide kind of outpouring of grief and emotion for what is happening to us and what has continued to happen to us for centuries. So it's very important now that we continue the momentum and keep speaking about it, but also we need solutions, we need strategy.
Yeah.
Like there's no point protesting without having a strategy behind it.
Like what's next?
Yeah.
How do we get into place?
Yeah.
And what I was gonna say, but what do you think Black liberation looks like to you?
I think we need to remedy the trauma that we've had in terms of generations. That's the most important thing. Like we have to rehabilitate ourselves. We have to have our own schools. We have to have our own economic foundation. And until we do that, we're not going to be able to do the things that we want to do. Because every other culture, you look at the Jewish, you look at the Chinese, they have an economic foundation. Also, we need a nation state. We don't have our own nation state. We don't have the United States of Africa. We don't have a military behind us. We don't have nothing behind us. So you're going to countries and saying, look, oppressors, please give us reparations. We're not even ready for reparations because we haven't even sorted ourselves out. We haven't solved the issues that have been created by the oppressors, but also we've now kind of made it worse because we haven't remedied them. Like we haven't focused on really finding a solution. So I think it's very important that we take charge of this, but keep the momentum going, but actually have a strategy. And until we unify Africa, we can't see the change that we want to see. Because you can't then go to the World Court for Human Rights and say, right, we want reparations. They're going to ask you, okay, so what's your nation state? We don't have one. We don't have a flag. We don't have an identity. We don't have anything. Like even Americans, if you look at George Floyd, in America, you're African before you're American. You're African American, which is a term I don't like because you're indigenous to this world. But in Italians that migrated there, Polish, they are American Italian, American Polish. Do you understand? So you're not.
Teach me something today. I'm just learning my mind. Like this.
Well,
continue.
It's mad because you're not actually a citizen legally of that country.
Wow.
So when these things actually happen to you, who are you going to complain to? The same country that has potentially brought you there, because a lot of African Americans are already indigenous, but you don't know because your history has been destroyed. So you could be from there. So if you can prove you're from there, like the native Indians did, the Native Americans, then they got their reparations, they got their reserves, they got what was coming to them. But we don't have that. So until we do that, we're not going to see the change that we need to see. So we're going to keep fighting fires that have been set by the oppressors, you know, and keep being distracted because we have to have a centralized movement, a triangulated movement from UK, USA, and Africa. And the thing is, the USA, we always look to the USA for the race relations and all this stuff like that, but the UK created this. They created racism. They created everything. America just made it worse, you know, and they're happy to just do what they're going to do and kind of just sell it, really. But the UK will pretend and sweep it under the carpet. Oh, no, we didn't do that. Oh, we didn't initiate.
Package it well. It's very well polished and packaged.
Yeah.
They do that very well.
It is. And it's very difficult, but we have to come together and we have to solve our own trauma. And until we do that and our own solutions, then we're not going to see the change that we want to see. And it's so important that we do that.
It is very important. And I just want to know before I let you go, Throughout your whole journey of life, you said you were 37, is that correct? So, 37 years of life, I want to ask you a question. What would you say has been your greatest lesson throughout your time and that's been most impactful to you?
So I'm going to cheat. It's going to be 3 words.
Three
so,
words.
yeah, it's going to be passion, perseverance, and dedication. Because most importantly, I found my passion at a young age, which was football. And out of that came everything that my life has come to be. And persevering no matter what, which has been difficult at times, growing up where I grew up, but also the challenges on the way, especially as a black man, and living in different countries, Ireland, Romania, and just trying to go towards my dreams. But just dedication, like dedicating myself to my journey and to my growth and just trying to be the best person I can be. So those are the 3 things which I really kind of just highlight in all the work that I do with young people and anywhere that I go, whether I do keynote speeches or whatever, just passion, perseverance and dedication. Like, it's been so important on my journey of life.
I love that. And keynote speeches, you've been doing a lot of talks here and there, all around, everywhere. You're here now. But you've been speaking a lot about police stop and search and all of that stuff. Can you talk to us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so during lockdown, because I'm a key worker, I was delivering food to families that needed food and just trying to be there for people in light of a pandemic. But I was out delivering food to friends that lost family members to COVID. And it was in South East London on the Wharf Road, so in between Elephant and Castle and Camberwell.
Woolly Road?
Yeah, Woolly Road, you know about it, yeah? BAGEL KING and that, yeah?
No, slashy. Apple crumble and custard, 24 hours.
Always.
When BAGEL KING looked, I was just like, what, is not open 24 hours?
And that's when you know it was serious. You know it was serious, yeah.
That's the only thing that can close BAGEL KING.
Trust me, a pandemic. So, but yeah, I was out and I was delivering some food. And on the way to my next drop-off, I saw a police van and about 8 officers around, a white and a black boy, searching their vehicle. And rather than drive past, I always try to see what's going on. So I stopped, wound down my window, and I had tints at the time, and I wound down the window. I was like, "Boys, you all right?" And they were like, "Yeah." They were happy that I stopped, and I was just overseeing it. And then all the officers turned around and looked at me, and I just said, "All right, cool, just checking you guys are okay." So I was actually fasting for Ramadan, so I stopped off at a shop to get some dates to break my fast. Got out of the car, got the dates, got back in my car, was literally in my car for like 45 seconds. As I spun round on the side road to go back onto a Wharf Road, I saw blue lights behind me, so I just pulled over thinking it wasn't for me, expecting to shoot past, and then they pulled alongside me. "Can you get out of the car, sir? Section 23, Misuse of Drugs Act. You looked very suspicious on the side road. You looked like you were selling drugs." And I was just like laughing, like, "Oh, come on, you're being serious. Like, I'm out here delivering food. Why are you on the streets?" And I said, "Look, I'm a key worker. I'm a founder of an organization called Mentivity. I grew up in this area. I do so much work in the community. This is who I am." That they disregarded it all. Literally racially profiled me as a drug dealer, someone negative in society. Literally, I heard them speaking amongst themselves. I mean, what does he expect? Look at the car he's driving, etc. Blah blah blah. So it was just all those kind of typical stop and search language, and it's something that I've heard over 30 times in my life. I've been stopped and searched since the age of 14 over 30 times. I was actually assaulted by a police officer, age 14, going home from school in my uniform. Me and my mum took it to court with CCTV evidence, eyewitness accounts. The Crown Prosecution Service at the time threw it out through lack of evidence.
I don't understand. There was CCTV and there was lack of evidence.
Lack of evidence.
And the UK's a racist.
So literally, I had to go to court because they said that I assaulted the officer and it was a public order offence. So I had to go to court in my school uniform, so scared, thinking I'm going to go to prison for something I never did or something. I didn't know what was going to happen, what the outcome was. But it was quite traumatic. And for that 23 years of my life and being stopped and searched over 30 times, I just hated the police. Obviously, where I grew up, you learn to hate the police anyway. But I really struggled with it, and being stopped and searched just got to a point on that day, I just had enough. And I said, you know what? I started filming it. I did on Instagram Live. And I just started schooling them because I'm like, I'm a big man. Like, I'm 37. You guys are like 23, 24. So I just started schooling them. And I told them in the video, like, you know what? I'm going to teach you guys how to talk to people around stop and search in the community. And the Met Police are going to pay me to do it. And 6 weeks later, I launched the first training program with the Met Police at New Scotland Yard. So I'm actually now schooling the police around cultural equity, conscious bias in relation to stop and search, but also part of kind of policy. I'm part of the team that was working on the Mayor's Action Plan for Policing, so around police accountability. So I'm really pushing that right now, personally and as an organisation with Mentivity, and just really changing the way that police are trained and having real open, honest dialogue around why they see us the way that they do, and the recruitment policy, and also linking the Raising Aspirations project in terms of, right, we have to infiltrate the Met Police with people from the community that it's supposed to serve. It's got to be reflective of who we're policing. And if you don't understand who you're policing, this is why we've always had the issues that we do with the Met Police, because they are recruiting a lot of people from outside of London who don't understand, who are not reflective of the demographic, they're not Black British, Black African. And the thing is, now we have to look at ourselves and say, look, we've got this whole code of silence, we've got this whole attitude towards the police, but we've got to change before we see any change. So if we don't change, then we're not going to be able to progress. So now I've just taken it upon myself, in light of what happened to me and what has happened to me, to just be a beacon and be symbolic in terms of my actions and just backing it up. So it's been a journey. So it's just starting, but it's got to be done.
It has to be done.
Yeah.
And I feel like all the work that you've been doing with in terms of education, in terms of football, in terms of training, in terms of this stop and search reform, like you're doing amazing work, and the service that you are doing, like, it will go so far, so far. And I just want to thank you and applaud you for the work that you're doing as a young Black man. And I want to know, finally, what do you want the legacy to be for all the work that you've done thus far?
It's a great question. I mean, I want Mentivity, it's going to be my last work, but I want it to be something that continues long after I'm gone. I mean, we have laid some of our roots down in Kenya and Uganda. We've got initiatives there. So we've got a football academy in both Kenya and Uganda, and we're bringing Mentivity in terms of the mentoring and the alternative education to Kenya as well, because it's important, and it's somewhere that's just become close to my heart since I went there first in 2018, and Uganda is beautiful too. So I really want to provide more opportunities for the African diaspora across the world in terms of what we're trying to do at Mentivity in terms of education, linking your careers to your passions. And I just want it to be part of the rehabilitation of our people. And I think it's really, really important that we have people from the very same community sharing those experiences, but spreading those experiences to other parts of the world so that you can be more informed and more empowered. So that will be my legacy.
Amen. Thank you so much for blessing us, for speaking with us, for being here on the podcast. For anybody that wants to get in touch with you, get in touch with the work that you do, please plug it.
Yeah. Wow. So you can find us at Mentivity on Instagram, on Twitter, myself, Sayce Holmes Lewis on Instagram and at Twitter as well. You can also check us out at www.mentivity.com.
That's it. You heard it here first on the High and Black podcast. I am Bisi Akins. I hope that you thoroughly enjoyed this one. And please keep it locked for the next one, because we come back with more. Okay? Peace and out. See you soon. Peace out. Bye. Bye. Bye.